The grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel in New York City glittered under crystal chandeliers that hung like frozen waterfalls. The Titans of Industry Gala was in full swing, an annual spectacle where billionaires, senators, tech moguls, and old money heirs mingled, clinked glasses of vintage champagne, and pretended the world outside their bubble didn't exist. Waitstaff in crisp black uniforms moved like shadows among the elite, refilling flutes and clearing plates without drawing attention. One of them was Chloe Moore. Chloe was 28, with sharp hazel eyes that missed nothing and a quiet strength forged from years of grief and determination. She wore her uniform like armor, her dark hair pulled into a neat bun, her movements precise despite the exhaustion of working double shifts for months. Tonight wasn't just another catering gig. It was the culmination of 2 decades of quiet revenge. 20 years earlier, her father, Daniel Moore, had been a respected financial advisor at Obsidian Dynamics, the conglomerate run by the ruthless Sterling Cross. Daniel uncovered irregularities. Massive embezzlement from employee pension funds funneled into offshore accounts. He confronted Sterling, refusing to sign off on the fraud. Days later, Daniel was arrested for the very crime he had tried to expose. The evidence was ironclad, planted perfectly. He was convicted, his reputation destroyed. Unable to bear the shame and the loss of his family's future, Daniel took his own life in a holding cell. Chloe, only 8 at the time, watched her mother crumble and their home foreclosed. The official story: Daniel Moore was a greedy thief. The truth, buried deep, was far darker. Chloe had spent her teenage years and early 20s piecing together fragments. Old emails, whistleblower tips, anonymous bank records leaked from disgruntled employees. She trained as a private investigator, worked undercover jobs, and slowly built a dossier that could topple an empire. Tonight, Sterling Cross himself, the man who had orchestrated it all, was sitting at the head table, surrounded by sycophants. Sterling Cross was 45 tall, impeccably tailored in a custom Brioni suit that cost more than most people's annual salary. His silver-streaked hair and cold blue eyes gave him the look of a predator who had never lost a hunt. He had built Obsidian into a trillion-dollar behemoth by privatizing water supplies in drought-stricken countries, profiting from market crashes he sometimes helped engineer, and cultivating alliances with politicians who owed him favors. Arrogance wasn't a flaw for Sterling, it was his signature. Chloe approached the table with a tray of ice water. As she leaned to place a glass in front of Sterling, her hand trembled, just slightly, from nerves she had suppressed for years. A few droplets spilled onto the lapel of his jacket. The table froze. Sterling looked down at the wet spot, then up at Chloe. A smirk curled his lips, slow and cruel. "Do you have any idea how much this suit costs?" he said, voice loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Laughter rippled around him like a wave. "More than you'll earn in your entire miserable life, sweetheart." Chloe's face burned, but she kept her eyes steady. "I'm sorry, sir. It was an accident." "Accident?" Sterling leaned forward. "You're fired. I'll have your manager escort you out before you drown the senator over there." He gestured towards Senator Robert Halloway, who chuckled obligingly. The room watched, entertained. Chloe didn't flinch. Instead, she reached into her apron pocket, pulled out a folded napkin, and placed it under Sterling's glass with deliberate calm. On it was handwritten text and a QR code. Sterling glanced at it dismissively, still smirking. Then he looked closer. The smirk vanished. The napkin read, *wire transfer, $12.4 million. Daniel Moore to Sterling Cross, Cayman Islands, 2006. Originals with DA. Scan if you dare. 10 seconds passed. Absolute silence. Sterling's face drained of color. He recognized the account numbers, his own hidden ones. And then he looked into Chloe's eyes. They were the same hazel as Daniel's. Recognition hit like a freight train. Sterling stammered, voice cracking. I'm sorry." The words hung in the air. Sterling Cross never apologized. Not to employees, not to competitors, not to the families he ruined. Chloe tilted her head. "Louder, Mr. Cross, so everyone can hear." Sterling's hands shook. "I'm sorry," he said, louder, voice hoarse. "I apologize, publicly, for my behavior." Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Phones came out, recording. Sterling's wife, Isabella, stared in shock from across the table. Chloe leaned in. You framed my father. You destroyed my family. You thought I was just a waitress. But I've been waiting 20 years for this moment. Sterling tried to recover. This is ridiculous. You're delusional. A man in a dark suit stepped forward, Detective Marcus Miller, NYPD Financial Crimes. If she leaves this room, Mr. Cross, I place you under arrest right now. She's wearing a wire. Everything you've said tonight is recorded. Sterling's eyes darted to Senator Holloway, who suddenly looked pale. Holloway had been in on the original scheme, approving regulatory loopholes in exchange for campaign donations. But the real bombshell came next. From the side entrance, an elderly woman in a wheelchair was pushed forward by Ellen Holloway, the senator's wife. The woman was Martha Cross, Sterling's mother, long believed dead. Martha's voice was frail but steady. You faked my death, Sterling. You locked me in that facility in upstate New York to claim my trust fund. You used my name for money laundering, cartel deals in Bolivia, bribes to officials. I kept a diary. Every detail. She held up a worn leather journal. Chloe nodded. She had located Martha 6 months earlier, smuggled her out, and kept her hidden until tonight. Chloe played an audio recording on her phone. Old, grainy, but unmistakable. Sterling's voice from 20 years ago. Sign the confession, Daniel, or I'll make sure Chloe pays the price for the rest of her life. Your little girl won't have a future. Daniel's broken reply. You monster. The room erupted. Security hesitated. Sterling bolted toward an exit, but Detective Miller's team blocked him. In the chaos, Sterling was cuffed. But before they could lead him away, he whispered to Chloe. It wasn't just me. Holloway ordered the hit on your father. He said, dump him in the Atlantic. Make sure the girl is dead too. Chloe froze. Sterling continued, eyes desperate. I have a backup server. Queen's Storage Unit, Unit 47. The Olympus Group Ledger. Names, dates, amounts. Holloway, the mayor, judges, defense contractors. Infrastructure scams that bled New York dry. Take it. End them. Chloe stared at him. Why? Because maybe some part of me wants to be free of it. She didn't trust him. But she took the information. Weeks later, after Sterling's initial arrest for fraud, extortion, and conspiracy, Chloe and a small team, including a repentant Sterling who had cut a deal, executed a daring plan. They rappelled into the Times Square studio of the National Morning Show during a live broadcast. Chloe held up the ledger files on a laptop while Sterling, in custody but allowed a supervised statement, confessed on air. The ledger exposed everything. Billions siphoned from public projects, bribes to officials, and Senator Holloway's direct order to eliminate Daniel Moore. Holloway was arrested that afternoon, later sentenced to 3 life terms. Sterling pleaded guilty to multiple counts. He liquidated much of his fortune to repay victims, including pension holders ruined by the original fraud. He received 20 years. In prison, he wrote Chloe a letter. Asterisk, you could have destroyed me without mercy. Instead, you forced me to face what I became. Thank you for giving me back whatever shred of humanity I had left. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you find peace. Asterisk. Chloe read it, folded it, and placed it in a drawer. She used part of the recovered funds to start her own investigative firm, Moore and Associates, dedicated to corporate accountability and justice for the overlooked. Power, she learned, is indeed fragile. Arrogance crumbles in seconds when truth steps into the light. And sometimes even giants can be humbled, not by force, but by the quiet persistence of someone who refuses to be invisible.